Some of the most damaging relationships are the hardest ones to explain, and they don't have to look extreme in order to be deeply harmful. Welcome to the Covert Narcissism Podcast, where we make sense of what never quite made sense. If you've been listening for a while, you may already understand what's happening in your relationship. You can see the patterns, you can name the behaviors, but maybe you still feel stuck in the same cycle. This is where coaching comes in. It's not about learning more, it's about having the support to finally apply what you already know and begin moving forward. You need a coach. If you're ready for that next step, I invite you to join me in my coaching program. You can learn more about it at covertnarcissism.com. Have you ever struggled to put words to what's happening in your relationship? Where nothing looks bad enough to point to, but something feels wrong every single day? Today we're talking about covert narcissistic abuse, restricted autonomy, and the AI tools that are helping survivors finally see their story clearly. Today I am joined by Anne Wintemute, co-founder and CEO of Aimee Says. This is an AI companion built specifically for survivors of relationship abuse, coercive control, and narcissistic partners. Anne spent years working directly with survivors who were navigating the family court system before she and her co-founder asked a powerful question. Could AI help survivors document, understand, and ultimately heal from what they had been through? And the answer was yes. And today, Aimee Says has helped over 70,000 users do exactly that. In this episode, you are going to learn how Aimee Says works behind the scenes to detect patterns like restricted autonomy, gaslighting, coercive control, and many others, even when there's no smoking gun, no single moment that you can point to. We'll talk about how it turns your lived experience into data that you can actually use, with things like visible bubble charts that show you the shape of your relationship, timelines that reveal escalation, and binders that can prepare you for mediation, court, or even to give to your own therapist. We will also get into how this is fundamentally different from something like ChatGPT, how your privacy is protected, and where Anne sees this technology going in the near future. If you've ever felt like you didn't have the language for what happened to you, or like no one would believe you without proof, this episode is for you. And I will tell you now that Anne is giving my listeners a special code for their first month free. And that code is all capital letters, my first name, Renee, Renee. Now let's get into it. So I want to welcome to the show today, Anne Wintemute. And it's been such a pleasure to start to get to know you.
It's just wonderful to be here, Renee. Thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome. And Anne is, my understanding, is a co-creator of this thing called Aimee Says that a lot of people here listening might go, hey, I think I've heard of that before. And I'm really eager for you to share this with the audience today. But to get started, just maybe tell us a little bit about yourself.
Gosh, well, I live in Denver, Colorado. In addition to being the CEO of Aimee Says, I'm an urban farmer. I have chickens and goats, and love gardening. So I have a life and a family outside of this work that I do. But that work that I do is certainly the most rewarding way that I spend my time, and that's using technology to support survivors of all different types of relationship abuse. And I'm excited to talk about those covert forms today.
Okay, awesome. And Aimee Says started when? Where did this come
Two
from?
and a half years ago. So at the time, I was working directly with survivors they'd left their relationship. They did the thing that everyone told them they needed to do. And then they ended up caught in the family court system. They ended up bumping up against the realization that people tend to be disbelieved when they try to expose people's abuse. And that's the space that I was working in when generative AI came out. And at the time, I just thought, my co-founder and I, Stephen, does technology have a role to play in this space with the advent of the kind of hyper personalization of AI? And it turned out, 70,000 users later, that AI really does have a role to play in this space.
I think it definitely does. And one of the things I want to get into here in a little bit is what makes Amy different from like ChatGPT and some of that. So we'll dive into that. But why the name Amy? Where did that come from?
Amy, business startups can spend a lot of time figuring out what name works for them. Amy has the word AI in it, AI, and
Okay.
then me, MEE. So it's AIMEE. And it turned out that that was the French word for the feminine form of beloved. And relationship abuse is a crime against both the kind of duality of love and our ability to love and care for ourselves. And I just thought there's just nothing more perfect to helping someone reclaim their life than coming to find themselves beloved again.
That is beautiful. I love that. I did not know that that's where you had come up with that name. Okay. And so let's just maybe dive in a little bit and say, kind of walk us through this. How is this different than, say, a Chat GPT? I know a lot of people here are familiar with
Mhm.
Chat, and maybe that's their start to AI type stuff. What's different about this?
So when you first approach either ChatGPT or Amy, it'll probably feel fairly similar. There's an invitation to begin a conversation. Now, arguably, the library that we're trained on is higher quality. We have more safety parameters. There's specific things that we're looking for. Our model is trained differently. But if you're just having one of those free chats, it might feel pretty similar to ChatGPT. We do have more privacy. We're never training on anybody's inputs, the things that they say to Amy. We're never training on Amy's outputs. We have much higher privacy standards than ChatGPT does. But in terms of the user experience, they might be fairly similar until we start getting into the background, which is what I'm excited to talk about today, which is where Amy truly sets herself apart from any of the frontier models. If we're talking about Claude or Gemini or Copilot, there are a lot of kind of data structures beneath it that truly set it apart.
Okay. And I'm really excited to get into those. I will say that the first time you and I ever met, which I don't remember how long ago that was, but it was last year sometime.
Mhm.
And when we first met and I first started looking into this, I was also one of those who thought, this is kind of the same as chat. It doesn't seem much different. However, I have recently dug in a little more into that background and seen some of the new directions you've taken it. And I'm super excited. Like, I'm like crunching all my material, even though I've been divorced now for almost 8 years. I'm now throwing all my material in because I want to see what it does with it. I'm really excited about the new developments.
Yes, absolutely. So, what you're talking about is these parallel processes that are going on. So, on the surface, you're having a chat. That chat might feel similar to a conversation with ChatGPT, but what's happening is very different in the background. Is that Amy is running a series of calls, if you will, to a series of different agents inside of Amy that are, for example, scanning. Is something that was shared in this chat, does it meet criteria for an event? An event is something that was observable. It correlates with a type or a tactic of power and control, abuse, or it has a child factor present in it. And when that's detected, she automatically drafts an event entry and tags it with all of the applicable labels. What happens over time, you have those conversations, you upload documents, you check in with her here and there. What happens over time is the account quickly becomes populated with the evidence, right? And we can use that in a legal term or because it's also applicable there, but we can also use it in just a permanent or a personal way. The evidence of the lived experience of survivorship. There's finally detection and names and memory, and I don't have to hold it all myself anymore. There it is through this single pane of glass.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that caught my eye, and I know you're gonna share some of this here. You called it bubbles, and it was the bubbles that really jumped out at me. But one of the categories that you named was restricted autonomy,
Hmm.
and that one jumped out at me immediately because I don't think I've ever used that phrase, although I talk a lot about losing our autonomy, but I hadn't talked about that as an abusive approach or an abusive tactic or strategy, whatever you will, restricted autonomy. But here was Amy identifying in my story times where there was restricted autonomy way back at the beginning of my marriage that I'm looking at
Yes.
going, I never even thought of it like that.
Mhm. The impact of a power dynamic is the loss of autonomy. And one of the things that's really hard for survivors to describe, especially when it was covert, is, well, how did we come to a place where you didn't feel like you could leave the house? Did he keep you from leaving the house? Did he threaten you if you left the house? Well, no, it was just the rule that I had to be home by 7, p.m. every night.
Mhm.
That, even in the absence of a specific threat, those kinds of restrictions are in place. We modify our behavior to try to prevent the kinds of unkind, belittling or shaming or name calling or withholding affection,
Yep.
etc. But the atmosphere of that restricted autonomy can be present even in the absence of abuse in that moment. And if you don't capture that, then you aren't really capturing the power dynamic and its impact in that relationship.
Yeah, it's easy to miss. It's
Hmm.
easy to, like, I remember saying, "Well, I didn't feel like I could leave the kids home alone with him," and I remember saying this to one of my friends, and my friend voiced, "Well, that's not okay. Are you afraid that he's gonna hurt them physically or, hit them?" I said,
Hmm.
"No, that's never been an issue," and he goes, "Well, what's the like, why would you voice that or say that?" I didn't have the words. I didn't have a way to help somebody who is not living inside my house to understand why I felt that way. And so
Yes.
I had to dig back through all of my notes and journals to kind of formulate that, but what you're telling me is Amy will do that.
Amy will do that. Amy can pick up on that. Another one that we see a lot is, well, I didn't go see the doctor. People will prevent, or people will not go see a doctor, survivors in the relationship, until things have gotten pretty severe. And when you kind of dig around at it a little bit, it's like, well, I was concerned that he might say I was overreacting, or that we shouldn't spend the money in that way, or right. So they were preventing access. That no one said, he didn't say you can't go make that doctor's appointment, but
Mhm,
the behavior was still modified, often to this severe detriment, right? Like that absence of medical care when you need it has a clear and obvious impact on you,
mhm.
because they wanted to prevent that upset, because they wanted to not be shamed for how they were spending the money. All sorts of hidden ways that people's ability to interact in the world in ways that everyone has the rights and freedom to, how you wear your hair, how you like to dress, whether you go to the doctor, if you want to spend time with friends, if you want to be a part of a community, have a hobby. All those types of things are often limited, coercively, if not, covertly, for people who are experiencing these forms of relationship abuse.
Absolutely. Even limiting your ability to spend time with your own family, your family of origin, your parents or your
Mhm.
siblings, or even your own kids. If I spend
Yes.
time with my own kids, there was a price to pay. Even though it was his kids
Or
too, like it was our children, and it was still a
Mhm.
problem.
Or comforting a crying child sometimes is something that's held hostage, that a parent feels like they have to jointly refuse to meet the child's needs in the presence of the other parent, and then do their more tender emotional parenting in privacy. All really good examples of people whose
Mhm.
ability to interact with agency and authenticity in their lives is limited, even if there isn't a direct threat to that in that moment.
Okay. So I don't often bring somebody on to like really kind of sales pitch their item, okay, their product. I really don't. And I'm serious about that. Like I protect this space. However, I think what you have is incredibly valuable for our listeners, for those out there struggling with all of this. So I would like you for a minute, just take a minute and sales pitch this in essence to the people who need it.
Absolutely. And I so appreciate that. And Amy is built by survivors who didn't have the systems that they needed to help them, for survivors who don't have the systems that they need to help them. So at its kind of simplest form, Amy helps take that lived experience. That could be the thing that happened today. It could be the thing that happened 10 years ago. And you just talk through this emotionally supportive environment, and turns that story, that messy, painful lived experience, into data. And that kind of sounds real unsexy. Like, great, we're going to turn my life into data. But what happens when we do that, when we can name it, when we can plot it, we can stick it in a graph, we can put it on a timeline, I can compare this information to this information, and I could see all of it in one screen. It absolutely changes people's access to their ability to understand their story so they can heal, understand their story so they can tell other people they need to believe them, courts, GALs, family members, future partners, etc.
Mhm.
And we think that really using this model really transforms what it takes from a burden standpoint to be a survivor, to manage survivorship, because this is the kind of thing that impacts people for the rest of their lives. So we think that technology has a role to play there. We're not perfect. We're constantly iterating. We're constantly testing. We're meeting with survivors who are using our product. How could we improve? Where did we let you down? But this is very much a labor of love. And it is very much, women scooping up pails of water to go back to the burning building to try to do
Absolutely.
what they can to save others. And I know that's exactly what you're doing with your time as well.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the things, to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, one of the things that this technology now allows is, if you take all those stories and you put it into data, like you said, that data now becomes more manageable.
Mhm.
It puts it into a binder, if you will, and I know you use that in some of your new development words in within Amy, but it's perfect because you're putting it into a format that now becomes easier to talk about, easier to explain. It makes it more tangible, maybe is the right word for it.
I have not used that term or heard that term before it, but it absolutely makes that ephemeral experience that lives in the privacy of people's homes, often even in the privacy of our minds, and it makes it tangible. That is really, really well said.
Okay. So I know we're on a podcast here, but I also put these on YouTube. And I would love for you to give, the YouTube followers and those of you who are listening to podcasts, jump over to the YouTube channel and find this. Okay. I'll put the link in all the show notes and stuff. But show somebody how to navigate this and what this is.
I would love to. Let me go ahead and pop up my screen. So, what we're seeing is inside of a paid account, anyone, anytime, anywhere in the world can talk for free with Amy. She won't remember, which is great because some folks need to make sure that there is never a trace that would be findable. But I'm going to show you on the inside what happens when you ask us to start storing that data. And I went ahead earlier and I did a chat over here about something that was a little bit more covert, so that we could get an idea of how Amy might respond to that. So folks who are listening, and even if you're watching on YouTube, I'll read it a little bit here and do some narrating. We're looking at a chat screen. And the survivor has said, I feel like the way he says things to me are just kind of subtly demeaning. But then if I bring it up, he says I'm being too sensitive. Like, we were going out and I put on a new dress. But when I came down the stairs, he looked at me with this kind of flat face and he said, "You look like a tart." He didn't say he hated my dress, but I felt it. I turned around and went back to my closet and I changed. When I came down, he was still kind of cold with me, but he didn't comment on my clothes. The drive to the party was quiet. And when we were there, I was afraid I would say or do the wrong thing. This is the kind of daily experience that some folks have.
Perfect
So,
example. That
perfect.
could be my clients that have just talked to me this morning.
This exactly, and this is the kind of, I mean, this is this is bread and butter of people who want to make you feel like you're just not quite worthy of them, right?
Mhm.
So the person who's having this chat is going to get a response from Amy that helps illuminate that experience, names it, provides kind of reference points and context to for that person to kind of assimilate, collate that experience, which is great, super helpful, very cathartic. But here's what's happening in the sidebar, if you will, that makes Amy truly unique. So she is actively scanning those conversations for evidence of an event. And here she's captured this one where he said, "You look like a tart." And automatically labeled it with name calling, belittling, and shaming because all of three of those things, two psychological and one emotional, were present. And she's gone ahead and drafted an event for this as well. So I can take a look at this event. I can, and I've now opened the drawer, folks who are listening, that show the draft. She's provided there's an unknown date because I didn't give her a date. Let's say that that's a thing that happened yesterday. And this has been captured. This is now a data point saved as a draft. If I click this arrow to go back to events, what I see is what all of the kind of accumulated experiences start to look like. So now I am looking at what we call the bubble charts or hotspots. And if you could see the screen, you would see a rainbow of spheres in which smaller spheres represent the types and tactics of frankly, abuse that are present in here, whether that's yelling, name calling, belittling is in a verbal abuse category, in physical endangerment, assault, other threats. I There's a dozen, more than a dozen spheres here representing different types of dynamics that can be present. It's also capturing just child factors. So these are things that are going to be highly relevant in child protection issues. And I can look at this data now in hotspots. I can look at a breakdown that shows me a line. I can see if it's getting worse, if it's getting better, trend lines, calendars, timelines, etc. And so this is an example of how all of this information, and I'm now scrolling the screen at all of these past events that have been captured. This is how that data population happens to make it possible to see everything in that one space. So that's that first kind of extraction of data, if you will. And Renee, if it's okay with you, I'll quickly show binders to show people how we reassemble that.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. And these bubbles, they really caught my eye because if you could see them on the screen, for those of you who are looking on YouTube, but the darker colors I think start to show that it's happening more often. Like
Mhm.
this is and so it's a visual, it's perfect visual of how serious some of it's getting, or maybe others are a little
Mhm.
smaller, but it really shows you the amount of abusive behavior that's happening.
Yes. Yes. And, one thing that's not demonstrated here in this account, because we test across a broad variety of abuse types, is for some people, one sphere becomes very large. And so they start to recognize that, for example, well, this is a primarily verbally abusive relationship with some of these other things going on. Or some people, this orange is restricting autonomy. Some folks, their restricting autonomy bubble is huge, and there's really only a few other kind of severe tactics that might be present. So, there might be an event with a weapon. There may be, trigger warning, a non-fatal strangulation, and then we see kind of massive explosions in this restriction of autonomy because the person lives so small to prevent such high risk to them.
Yeah.
So this shows fairly uniform circles, but that is not always common. Folks will have more distribution, more variance between the different types.
That's a good point, and I think like we were talking about earlier, one of the great benefits of this is how many times do I have people tell me, "I don't know how to talk about this to my family or to my
Mm,
friends. I don't know how to
yes.
explain it. I don't know the words." And I know one of the benefits of my own podcast that I hear from a lot of people is it finally gave them the language. They finally had the words they could use to at least describe what was going on in their world. Besides, I look at somebody and say, "Well, they're a covert narcissist," and people look at you like your eyes just glazed over. And so you really need language that goes past that.
Mhm.
And that's what I see here on this screen.
And there's something that happens when we can name something and when we can get ourselves a little bit of distance between our feelings and that thing. We call it clarity. There's a word for it, but it's very grounding. When someone feels clear about what happens, they don't feel like they need to prove it. This is clearly already demonstrated. It's a kind of collated post trauma lens, if you will, like to
Mhm.
view it through. It's Even though all the same things happened, it has less of an impact on that nervous system. So just
Right.
being able to be like, oh, that was endangerment. Oh, there's a name for that. That's excessive contact. You can't, that's a stalking behavior. You can't call me 11 times in 1 minute. And then we just pretend that that's normal. The part
Right.
of you that's like, this is not normal,
Right.
needs to see a word. And it makes, even if the facts don't change, it's much easier to handle. And one of the phrases that we use is same past, different future. Aimee cannot change your past. Good care. This is not just Aimee. It's just that most people don't have access to someone who can sit beside them 24/7 like an AI might be able to. But good support changes your future. And
Mhm.
that's what we're trying to do.
Absolutely. I will say that, kind of a little side note here, that when I was documenting and journaling and trying to make sense of everything that was going on, because this was before AI was the thing that it is now. So I was doing all of
Hmm.
this with Google Docs, and but I got to the point that when something would happen, and so in my marriage, I always dreaded there being, okay,
Hmm.
another gaslighting moment or another, belittling moment. But then I got to the point to where I was like, "Oh, I can add that to my journal." Like, it almost turned around my neurological
Hmm.
reaction to it because I was looking forward to being able to put it in. I could see that happening here too.
I love that. That was great. You are right that there is something about the absence of a place to put it that
Mhm.
becomes part of the isolation, right? I'm holding this. This experience isn't anywhere else. It's not written down anywhere else. This is a really isolating experience for me. Back or parallel to that comment, we tell everyone to document. Oh, you need to document that. What should I do? This terrible thing just happened. Oh, you should document that. But there isn't a whole lot behind you should document that. That's kind of empty advice if we don't have something to back that up with. But when we tie what you just said, like, oh, I can write that down, I can log that thing. And that idea that, like, okay, it doesn't just live in me anymore. It has a real and physical representation. That that's support in and of itself.
Mhm.
That has value in and of itself. The ability to put it outside of your body, stick it somewhere else, know that it exists is so important.
Absolutely. So, all right, so moving into binders.
So, binders is what happens when you're like, all right, so I have had all these chats with you. I have all of these events with you. I have 300 documents uploaded, our text message records, a co parenting document, screenshots, audios, videos, whatever. Well, now I need to get everything together for a specific purpose. So, binders is what we have named that. Binders give folks the opportunity to say, all right, Amy, please put together all of the stuff because I need it for this. We have show on the screen here now. I've moved us over to the feature called binders, and I can see on the screen here three different types that have been prepared. One's titled mediation prep. I have mediation upcoming. It's for parenting time and medical decision that needs to be made. Put everything together so that I have it all in one place for mediation. There's another one called psychological recovery. The prompt in that one was something along the lines of, I've been in therapy for a long time, but there's this one thing that I'm not overcoming. I want to put everything together for my therapist so she better understands. The one that we're actually going to look at is the protection order. But real quick, it's a couple of steps. Legal binder, name your binder, tell Amy what you need the binder to do. This page shouldn't take you more than 30 seconds. And it takes about another minute and a half, but Amy will put together, she'll scan across the entirety of your account and put together the information that's contained in your account that's relevant. So now we're inside of a binder for our listeners, and we're looking at the overview page. So she's created this overview that includes all of the key findings that are put together inside of this binder, including what might not be present. I didn't have any police reports or medical records in this account. And she's provided what's both a qualitative and quantitative overview of what's present in this particular binder. She's also created four tabs. One's called legal preparation, second, incident history, third, communication evidence, and fourth is threats and escalation. So when she was grabbing all of that information from across the account, she was also saying, like, okay, these things go together in a tab. I'm going to define these things together. Now, these things go together in another tab. So, for incident history, for example, she's put together here is the history, here's kind of the combined things, the repeated behaviors that are present in this relationship. And then also has created cards for every one of those. They're same that of your event cards. So, I can look at all of the kind of background information, the documents, et cetera, that would be associated with it. She's also provided one called threats and escalation because for a protection order, that would be really important, where she's included the more severe and escalatory things that have happened. So in these cards, we see that excessive contact, being followed home dangerously after an appointment, here, expit in the face, and threatened. These kinds of things that got stuck into this tab. So these are exportable, they're modifiable. I can take stuff out, I can put stuff in. And if I hit export on this, so it took Amy about a minute and a half to put it together, it assembled nearly 100 pages of documentation that's collated, labeled, tagged, represented visually, etc. It includes all of the associated documents that are attached to it. And I didn't have to do anything except come talk to Amy when I needed to, and
Hmm.
she did the rest of that work.
If only we could work that fast. You
Right?
know, if only we could work that fast, but she does it for us. So with these binders, my understanding at the very beginning, you pick between if this is a legal purpose, if you need this for legal
Mhm,
purposes, such as you said, mediation or a protective order or your court proceedings coming up. Or I
mhm.
think there was another option there, and I don't recall offhand what it was, as opposed to it being legal. What was the other side of that?
The other one's going to be a personal binder. For some folks, they don't have legal issues that they're attempting to address, and bringing the legal stuff into it can be triggering. So you can also produce a binder. It's going to be similar, except that it's applying itself to kind of mental health and recovery standards versus applying itself to the expectations in a legal environment.
So even somebody who maybe, let's say, is already past all the legal stuff, but they're in their process of healing and trying to
Mhm.
work through this and go, well, I don't need this for legal reasons, but I am kind of stuck in my healing. Amy can help there too.
Yes, and if we opened up this legal binder, it's been a minute since we built this one, so we've got more features than were available when it was assembled, but let's still take a look. The basis is still going to be the same. So I had told her, I'm stuck. I need some help getting unstuck. I want something for my therapist. And so what was produced was here abuse events. So I can look at this and see kind of that tabulated experience. Here's the kinds of things that go on. There's incidents demonstrating coercive control, restricting holiday plans, dictating children's participation, etc. So provided kind of explicit reference to those things. But what you'll also see here is what's the emotional impact. This is more likely to have chats in it. Yeah. So this carries some of my chats where she's saying you can see the emotional impact of what you experienced through those chats. And then also recovery challenges, right? So you can see this is different than a legal binder and
Mhm.
recovery challenges. She says here, and kind of a key point in this recovering challenge is that there are persistent co parenting conflicts with this uncooperative and inconsistent ex partner. These are a major obstacle, right? So, right here at the very top, she's like, this is ongoing. And that is a challenge to recovery. So that's the kind of way that she would assemble that information differently based on what I needed in that moment.
Yeah. I think this is awesome. I mean, this is where I looked at it when you showed me these parts and I went, okay, this is a step far beyond or way above and beyond what Chat
Hmm.
GPT offers because this is specific now for somebody who's dealing
Yes.
with manipulation, coercion, abusive behavior, any of that type of
Mhm.
toxic behavior.
Yes, because like in ChatGPT, if I went and tried to do this, I could say, "Hey, make this an entry, a journal entry," and it would provide the copy, and then I would cut and paste that into another tool that I wanted to use to add that copy there. Another screen that we're looking at right here is the document screen. So this is another thing that's significantly different than ChatGPT. You can actually store 1,000 documents with ChatGPT. You upload it, so she can he, she, it can reference it in that moment, but the documents aren't just being stored there. They're not being stored as evidence. They're not being kept kind of persistently attached to specific events, etc. So with ChatGPT, you upload the document, the AI can read it, which is valuable. Our AI does that as well, but it's not holding onto that in order to assemble that into a binder, in order to maintain its attachment to an event, etc.
Okay. Okay. Anything else in regards to all of this before I go on with a couple other questions here that you want to share with the listeners specific to Amy Says?
I think the only other thing that I would talk about is around privacy. So, especially when there's a risk that you're going to end up in court, in a lot of these situations, that's absolutely the case. Amy does provide additional privacy factors that any other frontier model can. And one of them is there's a presumption of privacy because we never train on your data. Our partners are prohibited from training on any of your data. We provide no third-party disclosure without your explicit consent, even meaning we can't see it, or a lawful order, which, knock on wood, has not happened before. We're also a legal prep tool, which means that there's the possibility of extending work product privilege. You can also put your attorney on your account, which could potentially give you attorney client privilege. So this is a much safer pocket in which to utilize benefit from AI when there's a risk of legal discovery. That's the kind of last thing that I want to say. Privacy is often a conversation in this space, and we're a closed AI about as locked down as we could be.
Okay. No, that's great. And that was actually one of my questions is how do you handle the data privacy? So thank you. Have you seen firsthand situations where Amy has truly helped someone in turning around something that they're dealing with?
Yes, they have to tell us about it. So we
Right.
have heard
But you've
absolutely
been in a
from
supportive
folks.
position for others. Yes.
And we have a Slack channel called Why We Build, it's hashtag Why We Build. And so when I receive those messages from folks or after I have conversations with them, I can de-identify everything and remind the team of why we're doing this, because it's kind of isolating over here. We're behind a computer screen all of the time. I
Mhm.
miss spending all of my time interacting directly with these incredible people. So some of those are folks who got the first findings under their coercive control statutes in their states, who had spent a year trying to get their perpetrator held accountable for things like coercive control or abuse, and finally had the kind of documentation to hand over to law enforcement to make an arrest happen. People who were less traumatized through their participation in criminal adjudication of their abusers, to have a supportive person, AI, throughout that process becomes tremendously scary for survivors to testify against their perpetrators. Folks who attribute, and I would say, no, that compliment isn't for us, but folks who attribute their ability to achieve safety for their children to Amy converting their emotional heightened, oh my gosh, I can't believe what's happening, into something that their GAL, or custody evaluator or judge looked at and thought, oh, wow, you've really got your ducks in a row. And perpetrator, there needs to be accountability for this type of behavior. So yes, we have a
Wow.
steady stream of things that buoy us and keep us working late at night and to keep building and keep solving problems.
Good. No, I love that, and I will emphasize that kind of what to your point, what you were saying is only people who then have reached back out to you and
Mhm.
shared with you the difference that has made. I do hope that, and I'm thrilled to hear that you do get that feedback,
Oh yeah.
because that's so valuable in the work that we're doing. Like you said, can be
Hmm.
very isolating, and it's a very heavy work.
It is.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
is. Yeah.
Where do you see Amy in 5 years?
Well, in 5 years, I want all roads to lead to Amy. We've created the first scalable response to a global public health crisis that is worsening, right? We have not only have we not created tools, we haven't even maintained steady numbers in this. This is a global crisis that impacts every sector, that literally reduces the GDP of a country and its population. We would like to be so accessible, so ubiquitous, that these relationships never come to full entrapment, where it never comes to a point where the person feels like they don't actually have the option to leave. I'd like to think then that 7 years from now or 9 years from now, that there's been so much accountability for behavior, that we see less of it,
That it's not needed
right?
anymore.
That it's not needed. If
Yeah.
people, are attempting to maintain their privilege through, exerting dominance, but it stops working, hopefully that'll create a vacuum that's filled by better behavior. Who knows? And we probably
Yeah.
need 20 years from that. But in 5 years, when someone says, "Oh, I don't know about this," or when someone tells a friend something about their relationship, that friend says, "Hey, you should check out Amy Says."
Yeah. I sitting here and listening to you talking about this and thinking, okay, where do you want to be in 5 years or 10 years? One of the thoughts that I've had on this is I'm always thinking, how do we help our kids? How do we help our kids?
Mm, mhm.
And so maybe one of the directions that this could all end up leading in the future is putting the tools in place to help our children have the education they need
Mhm.
for the emotional and psychological and coercive control to not exist because the
Yeah.
tools are there on both sides. Kids are not growing up and being the bully, and kids are
Yep.
not growing up and being bullied.
No, you are absolutely right, and unfortunately, this is behavior that starts very, very young. It
Mhm.
is not uncommon in boyfriend girlfriends at 11 years old to hear the exact same types of things that you would expect to hear out of a much more mature relationship that was unhealthy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So one last question is this integratable with the legal system directly? I think you said it's you can put your attorney on the account,
Mhm.
but this isn't is this integrated to where like courts are accepting the data this way?
So there's kind of two questions in there. So integrated as though I could press a button and this information would end up in the email, inbox of law enforcement or of my county clerk, et cetera. No, right? This is locked down. This is private. You have to download it to export it. We keep this data
Yeah.
as secure and private as possible. Um, but can you show up to court and say, "I would like to admit this event record"? Absolutely. Curate it, make sure that it's got the stuff on it that you want, it's in the language that you want. But it is no different than if you had generated it yourself. What you can't do is attempt to admit Amy is an expert. And the difference between that is you can say, here are my bubbles. These are what my bubbles look like. Here's this information on a timeline relative to this information. But you can't say, Amy says that this is abuse, and so it's abuse. And that's just because Amy can't be cross-examined. She's not an expert in that court. But she backs you up.
The tool.
It's your testimony, it's your word. And yes, of course, you could submit the events as evidence.
Yeah. So it's the tools that you can then take and use in a legal situation. Like you said, also putting this into the hands of your therapist. It's the
Mhm.
tools to help you in the healing. It's not going to do it for you, but it's the right tools that allow you more success and more efficient use of your time as you're going
Oh
through this.
my gosh. Yeah, yes, a real time saver. A real
Absolutely.
time and money saver. Yep.
Absolutely. Well, and thank you so much for this conversation and for absolutely all the work that you are doing. From my heart to yours, I say thank you for the help that you are giving to people who are in these situations.
Thank you, Renee. It is an honor to be beside folks like you. We're all doing the best we can to make tomorrow different.
Yeah. Well, one last thing would be where can people find you? Where can they find Amy Says? And
Great. So, amysays.com, it's mobile optimized. You can access it from anywhere that you have internet. We do have a downloadable icon for your app, but it's not in the app store. So you don't have a record that it was downloaded to your phone. And any of the support or contact buttons go directly to my inbox. It's me that you're going to talk to. And yeah, do you want to talk to them about getting some free time on Amy?
absolutely. So I have a code, a discount code that will give you the first month free. So I guess not a discount code, but it's a free month code. And that code is Renee, Renee, all capital. And I will put the link in the show notes for Amy Says so that people can just click right on it. If you're somewhere where you're not driving a car, you can click right on it and go to where Amy Says, and then put that code in is how that works. Then they get their free month.
Yep, you can use it for free. There's no code there. You want to sign up. If you need help more than just today, then go ahead, sign up for the free trial, enter the code. You'll actually get 37 days free. That is going to be plenty of time for you to be like, all right, is this going to help me? Is this capturing the kind of information about my life that I want it to? And we believe that the answer will be yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I look forward to many more developments as this grows because I know how much, the world is changing with AI.
Yes.
So no doubt this will be the same case here, but it's going for a better path and a direction to help these people who are dealing with this.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank Anne so much for this conversation and for the work that she is doing, for the help that she is giving to people in these situations. And to everyone listening, if anything in this episode hits close to home, I want you to know you're not imagining it and you do not have to carry this alone anymore. Head to AimeeSays.com, and Aimee is spelled AIMEESAYS, AimeeSays.com, and use the code Renee, RENEE, all capital letters, for your first month free. That's actually 37 days then to explore whether this tool can help you to capture and understand your own story. I'll have that link along with everything else we talked about today in the show notes. Thank you for listening. If this episode helped you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it today. And I'll see you next time. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. If you've been listening for a while, you may already understand what's happening in your relationship. You can see the patterns, you can name the behaviors, but maybe you still feel stuck in the same cycle. This is where coaching comes in. It's not about learning more. It's about having the support to finally apply what you already know and begin to move forward. If you're ready for that next step, I invite you to join me in my coaching program. You can learn more about it at covertnarcissism.com. Your story matters, and you deserve to be heard without judgment. Check out my coaching services at my website, again, covertnarcissism.com. And don't forget to subscribe, to thumbs up, to follow, to like this podcast so that you can get more empowering episodes like this one and to help us continue spreading the word so that our community can continue to grow. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. The information provided by Renee Swanson, Covert Narcissism Podcast, and CNG Life Coaching is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes and not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a healthcare provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. Renee shares stories from her personal experience as well as from those she has talked with for several years. Her material does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support any allegation or support a claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of this material and information provided.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.